I am Jessica Siegel. I am a former resident of Montgomery County, Texas. I am an attorney and I ran for judge for the family court in Montgomery County, Texas, which is the 418th District Court. I was arrested minutes after I filed my application to run for judge, and I was charged with a felony. It was important for me to be charged with a felony because a misdemeanor wouldn't have been big enough. They didn't want me to be a judge in Montgomery County, Texas. Somebody didn't want me to be a judge in Montgomery County, Texas. And I have to say they a lot because I don't know who they are. I can speculate, but I don't know. And when they did that, they ruined my practice. After I was arrested and I was still living in Montgomery County, I was afraid to go out of my house. I didn't think they would hurt me physically, but I sure was afraid they would do something to hurt me or my kids. I'm a widow. I have 4 kids. I had 2 kids. 2 of my kids were living with me at the time. One of them was driving. Every time she drove to work, I worried about her. Running for judge, I've paid a high price. And I'm not talking about the prosecution. My family, some of my families rejected me. My dad thinks that I shouldn't have done it, that I should have known what was going to happen. I did some research, and if somebody had been arrested and actually prosecuted to the point of getting a conviction, it would have been appealed. And there are no cases on the books where a candidate was prosecuted for anything related to filing paperwork that you have to file in order to run for office. I relied upon the Secretary of State's website for my information, and if you follow it, if you follow the whole reasoning to its logical conclusion, and they are successful, and when I say they, I mean the district attorney. If the district attorney is successful and gets a conviction against me, then every candidate that runs for any office in Texas has to be concerned and cannot rely upon what the Secretary of State publishes on their candidate information guide. That's a ludicrous result, simply ludicrous. And that just can't be right. why have it? Why have it? If you can't rely upon it, why have the darn thing? And I don't think they've thought about that. And I'll have to admit that doing this, being a part of this, I'm doing it because I want to be part of a change. But there's a selfish part of it too. Ultimately, I want the people that think that they can do these kinds of things and that they're above the law. I want to see them have to face the consequences of their actions. And I truly believe that in Montgomery County, Texas, that we are getting very, very close to the dominoes falling. And if what I do by not taking their plea, and unfortunately I don't have the plea with me today. I'd hoped that my lawyer would get it sent over to me, though I know exactly what it is, and can share that. They wanted me to take a plea that had 2 items on it. It looked like no other plea my lawyer had ever seen. He showed me a typical plea offer so that I could see the contrast between my plea offer and a typical plea offer for, I think it was an assault case or something. And my plea, the typical one would say what the plea was, so plea to class A, B, C misdemeanor, for example, how long probation, how many hours of community service, what the fine would be, and then any other conditions of the plea offer. My plea offer had 2 things on it. Number 1, plea to Class A misdemeanor perjury, and 2, sign an affidavit written by the district attorney's office in which I say a number of things that were not defined, but one of them would be that what I had reported or what I had said regarding the circumstances of my arrest were not true, or was not true. The facts that I had stated were not true. And I thought, how dumb. I wasn't the only one there, first of all. And second of all, what's the irony of, in order to plead a perjury, I would have to perjure myself. What about that? I would have to perjure myself in order to plead to perjury. And in the case of, I've been charged with tampering with a government document with the intent to harm the Montgomery County Republican Party. And I laugh at that because I try to envision any official of Montgomery County's Republican Party getting up on the stand and with a straight face testifying that what I did harmed the party, or that I could ever have had an intent by what I did of harming the party. Because when they took me off the ballot the first time I filed my application, and this was an odd circumstance that I was able to file it a second time, but because of the redistricting litigation I was, when they took me off the ballot the first time, to me, I have the letter from the Secretary of State's lawyer that said about, first he says, "You are correct. The Secretary of State's website did in fact say what you said it said, and that he never comes out and says that it was wrong, but it's pretty easy to infer that they had put incorrect information on the website." And like I said earlier, if you can't rely upon that information, then does that mean that every single candidate has to do independent verification of what is on their website? I mean, I happen to be a lawyer because I was running for judge, but the vast majority of people that run for office in Texas are not lawyers. And I'm not an election lawyer. I didn't know anything about it. And residency was the very first thing I looked at, the very first thing. And so I had to satisfy myself that I met the residency requirement before I went any further. So when the Secretary of State's lawyer, said, "Indeed, you're right, that it says that," and he followed that by saying that in Texas, it is the county party chair has the discretion. And he said specifically that the Montgomery County party chair had the discretion to leave me on the ballot, which he did for a couple of days until he was given counsel by the party's general counsel, who just happened to be a supporter of my opponent. And after having that counsel, I was taken off the ballot. And so by doing that, they rejected the idea of having a contested race. They rejected the idea of people having a choice other than the incumbent. They rejected essentially democracy.